Renegades Volume 1 Rise by Sean Frost. Prologue. In the year 2185, Earth has been rendered almost uninhabitable due to endless wars for dwindling resources and farmable land. Facing extinction, the world's top scientists gathered to find a way to ensure humanity's survival. With this act, the Exodus Project was born. With the aid of several factions, these scientists saw what was coming and funneled their resources into one last hope. Earth was doomed, and mankind's only chance and escape was to look to the stars. Thus, the Veneziano Core was built, a prototype engine for a next-gen spacecraft with the power to overcome the most significant barrier preventing mankind from exploring the stars: distance and time. With the ability to bend space itself, it allowed for nearly instantaneous travel. As the program showed results, the warring nations set aside their differences and flocked to it. On November 12, 2189, the Veneziano Core and the spaceship Destiny's Pillar were finally finished. A mass exodus to the ship began, with thousands of survivors and fertilized embryos aboard. The ship's computer housed thousands upon thousands of yottabytes worth of data on human civilization, its greatest triumphs and greatest failures. When final launch preparations were finished, the ship departed for its maiden and only voyage to a super-Earth around Alpha Centauri b. All those aboard watched and said a final goodbye to their broken homeworld before the core activated. But all did not go as planned. Destiny's Pillar did not arrive near Alpha Centauri b. When the ship's core took them out of warp, it hovered over a mysterious blue and green planet. Navigation systems could not determine their location. Probes sent down to the planet discovered that its atmosphere was an exact copy of Earth's and safe for habitation. They took a vote, and the ship's inhabitants decided to investigate the planet. After landing in a clearing, humanity took their first steps into their new home, a world called Terra. But they were not alone. They discovered that this planet was home to a species called Terrans. The Terrans appeared as humanoid versions of the various animals that once inhabited Earth before the Great Wars. The civilization proved more advanced than humanity before its fall. The ship's core had done more than compress space and take them to Alpha Centauri b. Instead, it brought them to an alternate but parallel dimension. With the ship's core spent and unable to be replenished, the humans had nowhere to go. At first, the Terrans welcomed them with open arms and gave the humans territories of their own to begin rebuilding. Sadly, this peace and cohabitation did not last. As humanity began to expand and became involved in the geopolitical landscape, it became clear that humanity was not seen as equal, and Terrans began viewing humans as second class. The humans continued to grow and eventually encroached on Terran territory. In time, both sides saw the other as inferior and themselves as the rightful rulers of the planet. A massive war broke out, and the humans found themselves against the Terrans' anima shells, large mechanized war machines outfitted with all manners of destructive weaponry. As the war went on, humanity developed their own anima shells, and the pendulum swung somewhat in the opposite direction. For 10 years, this war continued without end. For every gain, there was an equal or greater loss. Entire cities were destroyed as both sides sought the extermination of the other. In the end, sanity prevailed. A ceasefire was declared, grievances were heard, and the war finally came to an end. Both parties formed a new government, with each having equal footing, and a new age began. That was 50 years ago. Chapter 1. Isaac. Isaac awoke to the sounds of whispering voices, a choir of howling winds, and crashing waves. They were moving, that much was certain. Isaac opened his eyes to face a cold, metallic floor. He could tell the core powering the entire ship lay somewhere below. Isaac guessed it had to be a hydro engine that harnessed the water to propel itself at high speeds. Thinking about the various mechanisms and systems within comforted him somewhat, giving him the confidence to raise his head as he sat on the bench. He stood up, but the cuffs around his wrist held him down. Energy cuffs. He saw the long string of glowing blue energy running from the central link down to a clamp on a rail beneath the bench. Tony could probably interface with it and break them. Isaac felt the clamp and tugged as hard as he could using his long purple tail. It wouldn't budge. Why did I try that? Footsteps echoed from further down the long cylindrical hallway. Isaac turned to see a human wearing a towering suit of armor, painted the color of the night, advancing towards him. As it approached, each of its heavy steps boomed and rebounded through the tubular hallway. Dread churned in Isaac's stomach as he saw the 4 orange, slit-like eyes beaming him. The flat, angular face and long pointed structures from the head's sides made it look like an insect. The spiky armored plates hugged the body tightly. As it drew closer, Isaac could see a thinner but still reinforced suit below, like layers of armored flesh, and he heard the chilling whine of the servos driving each heavy step. It loomed over him like a living statue and gazed upon him with an intensity that made Isaac shrink into himself. He wore power armor, a mechanized suit that enhances the physical capabilities of the wearer. In fear, Isaac shut his eyes. Focus on the specs, focus on the armor. The Theseus 10s have an emergency manual release between the spine and lastimus dorsi. Instinctively, his arms went towards his pocket to see if they were there. He felt a slight sense of relief as he touched the bottle. His thoughts drifted back to what brought him here. The memory seized him and ripped him out of the present as he watched them play out in front of him like a horror movie. He remembered the sirens and the concussive roar as explosions ripped through the facility. Security guards in golden white power armor ordered everyone into the vaults, but a barrage of laser fire cut them down before they were of any use. Isaac remembered being curled up under a desk with his hands over his ear holes as he watched men in black armor kill everyone. People twisted and fell to the ground around him as beams of blinding light punched through them and dark clouds gushed from their wounds. Isaac shivered as he heard their hoarse cries. Plumes of sparks and flames violently erupted around him, and a haze of smoke filled the usually immaculate white rooms. Ripping the desk away, the infiltrators found a cowering and shivering purple lizard child in a stained white shirt and pants. "You didn't run because you were weak," a voice boomed in his head, sending a shiver down his spine. "No, not now, please," the voice in his head chuckled. "You know what must be done for you to escape. All you have to do is let me out." He put his hands over his head without thinking, as if trying to block out a phantom sound. "Sniveling fool, you would get us both killed. You could have helped them, if only you let me have control." As the voice berated him, the world shifted and trembled. He was no longer bound. He stood there, rooted in place as a hail of gunfire whistled past him. He turned to see 2 scientists fall to the ground as a pink mist left their bodies. He looked at their faces. They were frozen in agony and terror. Then the killers led him to the beach. The blinding sun stung his eyes and made him wince. Despite the sun's harsh gaze, he looked around. Isaac knew his best and only friend was somewhere ahead. He heard crying to his left and looked over to see more scientists, facility staff, and the other children were forced on their knees in the sand, while a squad of men stood nearby with guns raised. Their leader stood in front of them. His power armor was much bulkier than the rest. He looked like a towering, futuristic black knight with a large rifle. The commander put a hand to his ear and somewhat turned his back to the kneeling captives. "Yes, the assets have been secured. We are still combing the island for the lead researchers." "Why are they doing this?" "Understood, sir." He removed his hand from his ear. "Wrap this up," he robotically ordered. Isaac heard the safeties disengage. "No, you can't." Before he could blink, 33 people were efficiently and ruthlessly cut down. Time slowed as he watched beams of pale blue light fly from their rifles. He watched as the beams sliced through their skin and clothes, peeling away the layers. In the grips of fear and shock, Isaac took off. He had to get out. He had to. The jungle was right there. He heard them shouting, but if he stopped, they would kill him. Without his full consent, his feet carried him away. "You tried to leave your best friend to die, Isaac, and you say I'm the bad one." A man stepped out from behind a tree with a pistol in hand and struck. Isaac felt a cold metallic hand against his shoulder. In an instant, he found himself back on the frigid ship, staring at the man in power armor. "Stop muttering," the guard growled. The armor speakers amplified his voice. "Stay still, you worm." Isaac, in a panic, didn't stop shaking and thrashing. The man in the power armor exerted more force on his shoulder. Isaac gritted his teeth as it felt like the armored hand would break his bones. As it became unbearable, the man shoved him back against the wall. "Tony, is he?" For his insolence, he received a backhanded slap. Pain exploded across his face. His vision blurred as if peering through fogged glass. The guard raised his hand again as Isaac tried to sit up. "Do nothing. Cower. Survive." As Isaac lay still, frozen like a statue, the man lowered his hand. His suit beeped, so he touched his ear and turned away. Pulsar 1 here. Yes? Copy that, moving to the bridge. The ship violently rocked. The soldier paused, turned, and jogged down the hallway. Each booming step made Isaac's pulse rise. After a few seconds, a siren roared. What's going on? A door opened beside him. Out came another soldier, but this one didn't wear armor. The soldier escorted another Terran kid to the bench. Isaac immediately knew who it was. "Tony!" he blurted without thinking. "Be quiet," the guard growled. Isaac shrank back, body shaking and heart racing. "Good. Sit down, bug," he ordered. Tony's 4 thin arms were bound in 2 pairs of cuffs. His usually combed to the side black hair was down in his face and covered his square-framed glasses. He sat down without saying a word and let the guard cuff him to the bench like Isaac. Then the guard left him alone, and he went back down the hall. Isaac looked over at Tony. He could see the bruises on his orange skin. They looked like swollen purple splotches. There was also an unnatural bend to his left antenna. They hurt you?" Tony calmly nodded. "I tried using my cyberbrain to escape my cell, but they detected my intrusion and caught me." He coughed while trying to look at his friend with his large emerald eyes. Isaac saw purple bloodstains around Tony's insect-like mouth. He noticed a strange white collar around Tony's neck. A suppressor? It's blocking his cyberbrain. With that, he can't transmit or receive signals. "Did they hurt you?" Tony asked as he shook his head to get his hair out of his face. "A little." Another siren screamed. "All hands on deck. Repeat. All hands on deck. This is not a drill," a voice shouted. "What's going on?" Isaac asked. "I don't know. Something about the water. I overheard one of them saying the ocean patterns have changed suddenly." "Do they know why?" Tony shook his head. "Did anyone else survive?" Isaac thought about it. They were here for us and our parents. I think they killed everyone else." Saying it aloud somehow made it feel more real. All of them were dead. People he'd known for all 12 years of his existence. Gone. Just like that. He thought about each of them, even the ones that came only to take his blood and probe him, and he felt sorry for them. But he couldn't think of that now. He had another question. "Are they from a rival company?" "They'd have to be, given they're all using Osiris's technology, including the ship," Tony robotically explained. "They have someone on the inside, otherwise it would be impossible for them to overtake the facility's defenses in that short time frame." "But why only take us?" Isaac asked, already knowing the answer. Tony looked over at his friend and then down the long hall. "They'll harness your genetic information and they'll extract my cyberbrain, reverse engineer it, and figure out how to make their own. Perhaps we can prove we're more useful to them alive, they'll refrain from doing that." That was the Tony he knew. The other kids, due to Tony's pragmatic tone and unemotional demeanor, nicknamed him Tech. Somehow hearing Tech's purely logical assessment comforted Isaac a bit. The voice in his head still clawed at the cage, but he could feel its strength wavering. "I'm sorry for—" The ship rocked again. Isaac fell forward, but the energy chain stopped him from hitting the floor. Before he could sit up, the boat shook again. He flew back against the wall, chipping the short spines on the back of his head. Tech grunted in pain as his head struck the bar behind him. "What's happening?" Isaac screamed. "A missile? No. They would have given a brace." The ship jerked again as if something large and heavy slammed into it. Isaac could feel a change in the ocean below, as the boat felt more unstable than before. He tried to comprehend what Tech had told him, but it didn't make sense. He looked over at Tech and could tell he was trying to figure it out, and a way off the ship. After a few minutes, 2 soldiers in power armor raced down the hall and pulled the clamps to their cuffs. They hefted Isaac and Tech to their feet and forced them down the corridor as a crimson light painted it a hellish red. The ship continued to shake as if they were being hit with torpedoes. "Are we under attack, Charlie?" the shorter guard escorting Tech asked nervously. "Did Excellus find us?" "We're using the most advanced stealth systems on the market. No way they could have found this." The ship trembled. Tech looked at Isaac, and he saw the wheels churning behind his eyes. Isaac understood. When the boat took another blow, Tech deliberately threw himself off balance. Isaac saw the collar loosening. Isaac looked behind him. "The Lastimus Dorsey." The guard hefted Tech up and fussed at him. Tech's antenna twitched. Isaac feigned losing balance and fell forward and onto the guard near Tech. He quickly reached for the manual release. His thin clawed fingers slipped between the suit's panels like a knife between bones. He twisted the small knob. With a hiss, the guard's suit opened, and the man inside was exposed. Tech threw himself into the armor, knocking the guard out of it and the armor on top of him. Isaac instantly grabbed Tech's collar and pulled it free. "Damn it!" Charlie growled. He seized Isaac's arm and began to crush it. Isaac cried in pain as the vice grip tightened like a metal snake constricting a rat. Panic welled up in his heart as the four eyes pierced his soul, and the guard raised his hand to strike him down. Too late. Tech's green eyes flowed a faint cyan as he attacked the suit's systems. He triggered the emergency lockup. The suit's inner layers ballooned up, locking the guard in place. "Damn brats!" Charlie growled from inside the suit with a muffled and strange voice. "Alpha 1, this is Delta 2. The prisoners have..." "Don't bother. No one can hear you," Tech replied while beaming the stationary armor. "What did you do?" "I told the suit you suffered multiple fractures in every major part of the body. The lockup system automatically fired to protect your body from damaging yourself further. Ordinarily, it only locks down a section to serve as a brace, so you can keep using that limb and keep it safe and supported until you can get medical treatment," Tech explained. A subtle smirk crept across his face. He fished the unlock key for his guard's suit and undid his cuffs, both of them. He found Isaac's and did the same. I didn't think you could hack their suits. Aren't they on a closed network?" "Their suits, yes, but their communication software? No. When I entered their network while trying to escape my cell, I learned how to access their comms. All I had to do was send a fake transmission to his helmet, then find the link to the rest of the suit's OS." Clever. Tech fished out the sidearm from his guard's suit and an EMP grenade. He armed it and tagged it to the other guard's suit. The cylinder glowed a faint blue and it hissed as he stuck it against the armor. A few seconds later, the whine increased to a high-pitched roar and a series of beeps, and then a flash of light. Isaac watched the suit's eyes shut down and the lights faded. He also heard the hum of its systems die. "You little bastards!" the guard growled, pointlessly shaking inside. "The lockup still works even when the suit has lost power. If no one triggers the manual release, he won't be going anywhere." Both Isaac and Tech ignored him. Tech looked at the sidearm. It looked like a small gray rectangle, until he pressed a button on the side. The trigger extended and the barrel flipped up into a usable position. Tech then flicked the safety off and aimed the gun at the suit. The holographic display flashed in front of the pistol's hammer and showed him how much ammo the gun held. The gun looked a little too big for Tech compared to his thin, almost skeletal arms. Do you have a layout of the ship?" Isaac asked. "There's an escape pod 3 decks down. There's a terminal down the hall. I'll patch in and see what's..." The ship trembled once again. This time it tilted on its left side. Isaac and Tony crashed against a wall. Isaac looked up and frantically rode as the power armors plummeted towards them. As they rode out of the way, the two metal suits crumpled and dented the steel walls beneath. Whatever slammed into the ship had capsized it. The entire corridor had flipped on its side. Disoriented, Isaac began slowly walking down the length of the wall. Tech sat up and looked around, clearly stunned by the sheer and sudden force of the impact. Isaac scooped up Tech's glasses, cleaned them, and handed them to his friend. "Thanks." A metallic scrape sounded from further down the hall behind them. Isaac and Tech both froze. Isaac slowly turned, spotting 4 men, all human, in bulletproof vests and armor. As they crawled through an open door and onto the wall with them, the two parties exchanged looks at each other. No one moved. "Get them!" the one in the front shouted. "Run!" Isaac screamed. They fired warning shots. "They don't want us dead. Not yet." Tech spun around and fired the gun. The recoil made him reel, and his shots were wide, but the soldiers ducked all the same. He used the pause in their pursuit to escape. As Isaac rounded the corner and looked for any sort of purchase to slowly climb down, the ship tilted over again, correcting itself. It felt like being in a giant washing machine as everyone and everything not bolted down twisted in the air as the ship leaned to the right and became upright. Isaac and Tech collided with the wall, and before they knew it, they rolled down the junction. Isaac dug his claws into the ground as he spun out of control. Sparks licked the sides of his scaled hands as he slid, and a dull ache surged through his fingers. When he finally stopped, he was at the door leading to the ship's exterior. Tech slammed into it and loudly grunted. "Are you alright?" Isaac exclaimed. "Disoriented, but functional." 2 more shots collided with the nearby walls. These erupted into blue sparks on contact. "Stun rounds? We need to go." Tech aimed the gun and fired back while Isaac hastily undid the lock. He quickly pulled Tech through the door. As he did, Tech kicked it shut. A wall of water slammed into them, knocking them down. The salt water felt like liquid fire as it struck their eyes. Isaac winced but forced his eyes open. The sky was a thin overcast of gray, while the ocean around the ship violently writhed. More pillars of water and ocean spray erupted around them. Through the chaos, Isaac was able to see the horizon. What he saw puzzled him further. The waters were calm. Whatever this was, it was localized in a comparably small area around them. Isaac turned to Tech to tell him, but another burst of water slammed into them, knocking them down and flooding the deck. The frigid water soaked Isaac's simple white clothes. As the water receded, the door swung open. The first guard came forward and opened fire. Ducking, Isaac crawled away. Tech rolled to his feet and hijacked one of the suits. Using its servos, he made the guard shoot his friend in the back by redirecting his aim at the last moment. Then, while attempting to hack the other, disaster struck. Something pierced the ship from below. Isaac watched as the back end of the ship exploded. Bits of metal erupted into the sky along with a geyser of water. Iron hail, frigid waters, and embers rained down on them. Grimacing, Isaac felt the shards of metal cut into his scales. "That's impossible! There couldn't be a geyser this strong!" Then, as if to further shatter his worldview, a second eruption went off beneath the recovering soldiers. The spiraling pillar of water swallowed them up in its powerful jaws with a great brassy snap. "What's happening?" Isaac screamed at the top of his lungs as Tech slowly got to his feet. Tech said something, but the ocean's roar drowned him out. Isaac shouted back, trying to get Tech to repeat himself, but the ship took another powerful hit and rocked to the right, knocking him against the metal safety rail. Isaac yelled as he struck it with his elbow. Isaac quickly checked and sighed in relief. It wasn't broken. Tech pointed behind him. The seas began to churn and spin like someone had pulled the stopper out of a giant tub. The ocean's tidal grass tugged the ship closer and closer to the swirling abyss ahead of them. "How could something like that form out here?" Isaac demanded. "It can't," Tech replied, his voice faltering as he spoke. Tech spotted a nearby door and pointed to the opposite end of the deck. "We need to get inside!" Staying outside in this furious maelstrom would be suicide. The two sprinted for the door as the ship tried reversing its direction, while waves continued to batter the metallic spear-shaped vessel. As they ran, Isaac looked at the gray weeping skies above, trying pointlessly to figure out their location. Despite the chaos around them and the vessel, the waters further out from them were as calm as ever. Nothing on this planet could cause this. Tech reached the door first and tugged at it with all four arms, thanks to his longer legs. Isaac helped him pull it open. They found themselves on the bridge and facing down the frantic crew. Before Tech could react, a guard shot him with a stun round. "Don't—" Isaac took one to the shoulder. He screamed in pain as his insides burned and electricity surged through his body, rendering him inert as he slumped against the wall. He tried to stop himself from falling, but his body wouldn't obey. The bridge had a series of consoles displaying various amounts of information about the ship as cyan holograms. People frantically shifted between the consoles and screens, trying to comprehend just what was happening around them. Some screens displayed the ship's readouts, and red screens flashed on some consoles conveying warnings about the current situation. Beyond the consoles, a vast array of windows curved around the front of the bridge, giving a broad view of the waters ahead. Isaac, helpless to do much else, looked at a readout of damage reports. There were several breaches across the ship. He noticed a pattern that didn't make sense to him. The geysers were striking core systems and weapons, as if something guided the seas to attack the vessel. The ship rocked once more, and the lights and consoles flickered before displaying new errors and warnings. Finally, a panicked abductor mentioned their long-range communications had just fallen silent. "I want to sit rep. Give me a visual of what's happening. How does something like this just start up?" A tall man with graying hair barked. As he listened to his voice, Isaac shivered. "It's him! The man who ordered their deaths!" Isaac tried to ball his fist, but his hands barely moved. He only felt them twitch slightly. "I'm useless." "Sir, our readings show massive damage to the rear. There appears to be some sort of underwater geyser." The ship took another blow. "Our maps show no such activity or a system like this," the captain blurted out. "Sir, I have a readout of the ocean floor. Look." Isaac slowly turned his eyes to see a hologram. What he saw was impossible, yet it happened anyway. Columns of water rose out of the seas, from absolutely nothing, while the vortex intensified. There was something at the center, a small object dotted in red. It was so small the sensors could barely detect it. "What is that? Some sort of weapon?" Is it controlling the storm? The amount of energy a device like this would need is astronomical and almost impossible for something that small. Could it be part of a network of devices like buoys? Isaac's mind went rampant with hypotheses as the frightened crew around him examined the readings. The object moved. Sir, incoming collision. Give me a better scan of that object. Is it a missile? It really is an advanced weapon. Sir, it's closing in. We have a minute till impact. Evasive maneuvers. We're in the vortex's pull, sir. We can't move out of the way. The object is accelerating. Impact in 10, 9, 8, 7. Isaac shut his eyes. So this is how I die. Lost at sea in an unexplained anomaly. Better to die this way than at their hands. For some reason, he found this fact comforting. He looked at his best friend, but Tech wasn't awake. He had no idea what was coming. 5, 4, 3. Isaac shut his eyes. At least these people wouldn't survive either. 1. Isaac opened his eyes. They were still alive. The water suddenly calmed. What? A pillar of water pierced the bridge, cutting through it with ease. The pressurized liquid blade continued its stab and tore through the roof. Isaac wanted to scream and run, but he could only twitch his tail. The tidal sword quickly moved down the ship's length, slicing it in two like a giant knife passing through a loaf of bread. The metal ripped and fractured, sparks and fires erupted around them, consoles exploded and shrapnel rained down. Then the waters flooded their section of the ship. Isaac took a deep breath as the sea ripped him free from the bisected vessel and into the cold, dark ocean. The water stung his eyes, but he kept them open. If it's a weapon, I have to see it. Inwardly, he felt it was a stupid, dying wish, but he wanted to see what would end him. In the dark waters around him, Isaac saw something glowing at the heart of the undersea abyss. The blinding blue-green glow rivaled a sun and stung his eyes more than the salt, but he forced himself to look. At the center of the eerie glowing light, Isaac could see something there. The object was small, about the size of a man. Though the light hid most of its features, it was unmistakable. There was something humanoid and alive at the heart of the storm. It looked like it was in a fetal position. Flailing about, Isaac tried to swim closer to it, but a current shoved him back. However, the blinding light dimmed somewhat, and he noticed whatever this creature was, its head was the source of the glow. What is this thing? As Isaac's air dwindled, he noticed something else. This vortex was moving. He didn't know how or why, but it carried him away from the ship and his abductors. When he looked back, he could hardly see the shipwreck. Tech floated beside him, alongside a human girl about their age with long black hair. He ran out of air, and his mouth opened, swallowing the salt water. It filled his lungs and throat. He writhed and screamed as his chest burned, and his body grew heavier and heavier. As his consciousness slipped away, he thought about his mother and his dying friend. Then the darkness took him.